Thank you so
Yeah.
much for coming today. So to start off, could you tell me a bit about your journey to STEM and just a little bit about yourself?
My name is Kevin. I am a CS student at Waterloo. I'm working part-time right now as well. I have had one co-op experience so far, and I got a lot out of it, and I'd love to talk about it. And regarding how I got into STEM, I think from a young age, I was just curious a lot about a lot of things, and I wanted to do things that would have a lot of influence. I found that there's a lot of opportunity in STEM, and I was also kind of like academically wise, I was like more STEM focused. I did like mainly did like math competitions through high school, and I think towards the end of high school, it was mostly during the COVID era when we were all at home. I just had it was partially that we didn't really have much to do, but also because for a long time I had a lot of like coding projects I wanted to do, and it was kind of the perfect opportunity because we were all home and there weren't many there weren't many other things to do at home. So, and it was like coding projects are in general are just like solo online. So there's no requirement and it's easier to do alone than in a group for the smaller projects. So that's kind of why I thought that was a perfect opportunity to jump into these things. And that's how I kind of had more and more experience with CS and everything. And yeah,
Thank you.
that's how I ended up in STEM.
So you mentioned that you're working part-time. Can you elaborate a bit more about what you do on a daily basis?
Yeah, I work part-time at a startup called Skinopathy. They're a medtech startup, so like medical technology. What they do is some of the products they provide are regarding like apps that can basically take a photo of your skin and do screening. So if usually it's for say acne, burns, scars, etc. For these type of skin lesions, basically the AI tags it and rates it as high or low priority, and it's like basically on a scale of 1 to 5. Yeah, basically, if it is higher priority, it just notifies the physician as soon as possible. So to give them, basically, that's the point of it being high priority. For me, I do full stack. Currently, I'm working on a microservice that handles billing for, because they also have a cloud medicine. I'm trying to set up the billing side of that.
Thank you so much for elaborating on that. Just considering how much time your part-time job takes and also being a university student, how do you juggle those two things together?
Not sure. I think I just spend less time at school, and sometimes I try to min-max school. It's probably not the best way to do it, but I think maybe a few pieces of advice. The things I've heard are like generally like work smart, don't work hard. I think that's a bit overused, but obviously, like I do know a lot of people that kind of study a lot, but they don't get too much out of it, as in they kind of just like cram. That's one thing I highly recommend not to do. Another thing that I generally found really helpful is just, I guess this is for some of them it's worth studying in groups, and the other ones are worth studying as a individually. Of course, all courses should be like a mix of both, and in general, that's like a very effective way to optimize how much you're getting out of each unit of time. If that makes sense. Like for every hour, you want to get as much out of it as possible because you only have 24 hours in a day. And yeah, the one thing kind of that would be helpful to focus on is like how much you're putting in studying individually and
Yeah, of course, like, having that peers to rely on, also taking that time for yourself to work and optimize things accordingly. So just going back to your high school, how did you find the transition from high school to university, and how did you adapt to some of those changes?
For me, I think content wise, it was more like on the school workload plus content wise, I don't think it was like the difficulty went up a bit, but there was overall less work, which I think in my opinion actually favors me a bit because I didn't found that for high school it was what I struggled with was the sheer amount of work. I did IB and it was more like quantity over quality, honestly, because I think some of the things are like they just want you to do more work rather than learn more useful practical or even cool theoretical concepts. Yeah, basically in uni it was more like you have less to do but overall just harder. But I think on the like end of like actually living, like this doesn't really apply to STEM, but in general, like for most of us, especially at Waterloo, because Waterloo's kind of in the middle of nowhere, not many actually it's relatively close to Toronto, so most people like their permanent addresses in Toronto. Most of us live on res, so like compared to say UBC or anywhere there, SFU. From what I heard, most people live off res or like they basically live from home. For us, like even if we're off res, it's like student housing. We're pretty close to each other, so it's kind of overall very different vibe. And like as a consequence of that, I think there's a lot more adulting that's required, like living alone, dealing with everything here and there. And I think that was, for me, that was kind of a bigger change than school itself. You have to learn the little things. Yeah, I think that was I think that's like, it probably deserves more attention than the school content, because I don't think that, like, most students have been studying for what, 10, 15 years, but they haven't been living alone for 10. I think that's like something where I think people should be putting more attention on.
Yeah, there's definitely a big social change once you move to another place and have to realize that you are by yourself and you have to have that individuality. So given that we had like a pandemic and that was a big social change, how was university online and how did you adapt towards that?
I think it was okay actually. It was honestly less work because it was online, but it's just like it's harder to learn certain things. Yeah, so for me it was like in 1A, so like the first 4 months, first semester, it was I had my 2 math courses in person, everything else was online. And then for in 1B, it was like basically everything was everything was in person. After like 1 month of, because in January everything shut down. We had online for 1 month and then went in person. 1B, in my opinion, is basically all in person. It thought 1 month a bit of an impact, but like all the midterms, finals, whatever, everything, and the main lectures were all in person afterwards anyway. So I guess I won't discuss too much about that. But I think 1A online, I guess one thing that was really helpful was that I was on res and I had people to talk to, because I think that's a bigger part than, again, like the studying, because a lot of us have already been studying online for two years in the last 2 years of high school. And I don't think it's too different from that. And there might be hard concepts occasionally here and there that it's harder to pick up because it's online and it's not delivered in the same manner, and you can't just like put your hand interrupt or something. Or you can, but it's harder, I think, online. I think regarding that, maybe it would be worthwhile finding like a group of friends that in the same classes and try them first, or try emailing the prof, whatever.
I'm interested in the skin detection. Like, how does it account for bias when you have, say, darker skin tones, and how to recognize when there's a flaw within that skin type?
Well, I mean, in general, if you use like any of the modern algorithm for skin detection, for skin lesion classification, detection, etc., I don't think that should be a problem, because, well, a few things, like I guess I can imagine, like, for example, I'm trying to name one that's darker. I guess just in general, like scabs, right? Usually they're darker color, and so I guess you could say that a darker colored skin would make it harder to see the scabs, for example, right? But they usually for image detection, classification, everything to do with images, they use CNNs, and they adapt very well. Like, they're basically just pattern recognizing algorithms. If the background color isn't really a problem when it comes to that, because you still see the contours, right? Like, even if you do something as like simple as just draw out the contours. I need to clarify, I'm actually not working with the skin detection algorithm itself. I'm working like more on development that side. But anyways, I think that it would not be a problem, because like even if you do something as simple as just draw out the what is it called, contour lines, or do some sort of contrast algorithm, like it would make it very obvious that like scabs are, I think, no matter how, I can't say this for sure, but no matter how dark your skin is, I don't think, like, for example, scabs are going to you won't be able to see them, right? I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I think there's still a very obvious difference in darkness between the scab and your skin. Even then, there's also like other patterns that you can recognize. And for most people, their skin is, I guess, from the perspective of a image, it's basically just one flat color, and then comparatively to features such as like scabs, lesions, everything like that, it's like there's less things there. I don't know if that makes sense. But I guess one thing that is more complicated than stuff like dealing with biases such as like skin color tone is like size, because if you're moving your camera, depending on how close your camera is to your skin, that becomes a huge problem. They are doing things to counter that. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk about it, so I'll just leave that as a problem.
Okay, thank you for offering on that, because I kind of feel that.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so you kind of okay. Why did you choose computer science out of all the sciences out there?
I think it's just it's one of the most, well, for me, it was just from a young age. I felt like it was something just really cool to do if you can like code a robot or something like that. And I think later on I also found that, like, so I kind of just started learning to code early and everything along those lines, and doing little projects here and there. And I think it was like maybe towards mid high school where I found that it was also very like it's a booming industry, and so there's a lot of opportunities there, and that's kind of how I settled on this field. And I also kind of tried to self-learn it, and I ended up really liking it, so it worked out. And then, well, so far it's only been a year and a half of uni CS.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good answer. I love it. You mentioned it was a booming industry, and do you think perhaps because of other machine learning or I don't know AI per se, do you think there's still room for humans in technology? Because we all have that conceptualization that we will be replaced by robots per se. So what do you think humans play a role in that shift, or perhaps not that shift?
I think firstly, kind of this is more short term. I think there's like a lot of little things here and there that machines absolutely suck at. For example, like one simple thing is walking. There's like so much research in robotics on like getting robots to walk on 2 feet, and it's actually like especially fast, right? Like I think the world record is like basically almost human speed walking speed basically, and it's like this is on cement. There's no stairs, there's no obstacles, there's nothing complicated. Yeah, there's like it's just machines just suck at it. Well, I don't think it's machines that suck at it. It's just I don't know why like in general bipedal animals are so good at not falling over. Like it just logically, it's I think the main reason is like we have a bunch of receptors and everything that like we have stuff like proprioception, which is like if you say you close your eyes and raise your hand, right? You know your hand is raised. You don't see that your hand is raised, but right? It's like it's a part of like I guess if you consider the five senses, it's part of feel, but it's like feel. Usually people think of like I touch this, I touch my monitor, I feel it, right? But nothing's touching your arm, right? Maybe my clothes, but you still know your hand's risen, right? And it's stuff like that I guess I don't think we have really classified or implemented into our robotics that to make them I guess robust enough to handle complex stuff like walking across on top of stairs, around obstacles, over obstacles, stuff like that. Right? Back on topic, I guess that just means like I guess most things so far won't be replaced for a while. I think because I'm not familiar with the robotics industry, but like I guess this is still very like on the manual labor end. The stuff that is really gonna get replaced is, in my opinion, because one thing I kind of did a lot of research in NCS is natural language processing, which is like it's basically language AI. So basically, I think like some of the things that might get replaced or at least heavily intervened with is anything to do with very mechanical, like very mechanical natural language writing. So like by natural language, I mean like basically like English, say that's a natural language. So basically any human language is natural. Honestly, I can see like say for example ghostwriters being replaced. Like you'd be surprised at how good the essays they write are by these bots. I think that's like somewhere that's like I guess like one thing that people emphasize like natural language processing researchers emphasize on is that these machines so far all they do is kind of just rearrange words, change their meanings, etc. under the hood, but it's all done automatically. So there's still like a huge element of intelligence in there. It's not just hard coded where it's like let's move this around. It's more like under the hood. I don't know if that makes sense. It's just because like all modern ML models, nothing's really hard coded. Not much is hard coded. I mean, it's mostly like machines learn to do certain things. So like for example, I guess GPT-3 is it's just you give it an input and it just gives you an output, and it's called sequence to sequence, which means you give it input text and it gives you an output text, and usually it's something along the lines of you need to do some what's called prompt engineering, which means like you tell it what to do, like summarize this paragraph. Here's a paragraph, and then it summarizes it. You can be like, okay, this is a question, this is an answer, this is a question, and then you ask the question you really want to ask, and then it would give you an answer. So it'd be like you can get it to do stuff like that's similar to question answering bots, and there's all sorts of things you can do, but those are some of the examples. Yeah, that's why I think like the more mechanical things can be done, not obviously not like creative writing. Actually does pretty good creative writing, but I think it's not very genuine. It's probably just like because it's trained on the internet, it's probably just like copied off of parts of some stories here and there and just combined it. Although you can argue that like I guess like regular like fiction authors do the same thing. They kind of just take parts and pieces of fiction here and there and make it their own. Of course, there's like parts that are more genuine, but I guess the point is like for the more mechanical things, I think ghostwriting it, summarizing, maybe writing abstract for little things here and there would start to get replaced, and then I'm trying to think of jobs that I don't think stuff like journalism will be taken over, but honestly, some of the like news articles I read looks like they look worse than the things I see from bots. Like they're so mundane that it's just like this is true. Like there's so much repetition. Like it's just like this person, by the way, he's like 22, has done this, and then later on they're like, oh, this guy goes to university or something, and it's just I don't know. I think the writing style is very boring. I think literally I've seen bots write better things than that by a long shot, and so I think that's like 'cause I don't know what profession writes stuff like that, and if it is, and like even if it is, I feel like it's already been automated by bots, given how mundane some of the particles are. But I think that's like one field that is going to be heavily like there will be a lot of machine intervention. I think like I guess one of the common things I've heard is like the blue collar jobs of the future will be like humans doing image recognition for machines for training data. So basically like reCAPTCHAs basically. I can see that. It's kind of I've already seen a lot of similar things because for research they use this thing called I find this kind of unethical, but honestly, if you, I don't really know how we can get around this, but for research they use this tool called Amazon Mechanical Turks or AMT, and what it does is it's basically they call it surveying, but what it basically is for not training, for generating test data or evaluating their machine learning models. You basically send out a bunch of stuff. It's like, for example, for NLP, what they usually do is, say I want to make a better creative writing bot, right? I try something new, and then I give the original state of the art and the better our state of the art, and then ask them which one's more creative, or we give them individually and ask like rate this out of 5. How creative is this? How fluent is this? Everything like that, right? And yeah, and basically they're paid to do this. So they literally have people going on AMT, right, from the client side and filling out these surveys and getting money for them. I was reading about how like ethical this is, and I guess on one side it is like there are people who kind of need that extra money, and it's like a quick way to not like fully commit to a job or anything to gain some money, but at the same time it feels like it's kind of pushing more towards making stuff like this a full-time job, right? That would be very concerning, I think. But yeah, I think that's like the bigger thing that I find concerning than maybe some of the other automation. Also, self-driving is probably the other one that a lot of people are concerned about. I'm not too sure regarding how close we are, but because I have like talked to people and they said we're still kind of far. There's still like edge cases that people like that machines can't handle. Like, so for example, if you take a stop sign, take the O, and then like you vandalize the O, so like you draw something on it, you draw a smiley face in the O, or you put a sticker on it, the machine can't recognize that stop sign. Not always, but sometimes, and it's stuff like that machines handle really badly, and that's why I think they're still like, self-driving so very slow. Although, in my opinion, they should just fully transition just because it's already significantly better than humans. If we switch right now, we'd save so many lives, and I'd rather have that one or two occasional mistakes where someone vandalizes a stop sign than like the I don't know millions of accidents we get every day.
I have a quick little anecdote because you're right about the creative writing. They had like a human audience had read poetry by robots and then poetry by humans, and they could tell the difference. So you're right there. Given that you were
so are you saying like as in it's very noticeable that
it's noticeable the difference between how they write.
Yeah.
Given that I think you were a part of Millennium STEM, right? Correct? Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Given that you were part of Millennium STEM, how do you think that helps you progress within your career and your life so
far? I think most of what I was doing was like basically working on the website and whatnot, and I think the mailing service as well. And I think that just gave me a lot of experience with working with this type of thing. Yeah, that was really helpful, I think. Regarding like later on co-op search, whatever, I kind of knew a bit more than everyone else. So it just made job search easier, I think. That's one thing, and it was just kind of like more experience is always better. I know what I like, I know what I don't like to do. I know what works regarding web development. Yeah, I think that's the main thing for me.
Because you had the opportunity, what would you recommend to other youth who are wanting to get into STEM but don't know really where to start?
Okay, I guess I'm a bit more biased on CS because in my opinion, it's probably the most learnable thing on your own. Like you don't need classes, school, whatever, right? If you want to do physics, for example, you kind of have to go through all the way to like grad school, PhD, right? Otherwise, it's like kind of not very possible to go into academia or any research without that. I guess that's true for generally for sciences. Engineering is more like you get a bachelor's and you can work immediately. But anyways, for CS, in my opinion, it's very self-learnable and like I think there's like if you go on Stack Overflow, there's like a survey that's like I can't remember a huge fraction of current developers are self-learned. It's like quite an impressive amount. So I think I guess in my opinion, how to start would be just go on YouTube, learn Python. There's a I can link the YouTuber that taught me basically. His name is Corey Schaffer. Explains things really well without going into like he just gets the fundamental down really quickly and really thoroughly at the same time. And that's what got me into it really quickly. And then look through some projects, cool little projects you can do, I think. Like one thing that I guess like in my opinion, the thing that Python can't really do is web apps. Although you can still do stuff like class. So if you know HTML, it would make it easier to do small projects with it. So like one project I did purely just in Python without using all that other stuff is I think I did a scraper for COVID cases. I think as I made it so that when COVID cases in BC hit above a certain point, it would notify me like SMS. It would text me. That's like one little thing I did that you don't really. Yeah, it was just that's like one of the things I made. For example, I think you can find a lot of similar things to do. Maybe do the same thing for your province, city, region, whatever. I think there's also a lot of room for improvement for that project. I just never really got to it because I think COVID kind of died down by the time I was finishing up. I think just start with little projects, then build into bigger ones. I think after that, probably with learning Node, well, not Node, just JavaScript and then learn like the general stack for full stack apps. It's kind of a thicker learning curve. In my opinion, I don't think it's that bad. And you get a lot out of it because you can basically apply to like 90% of full-time jobs after that. After just learning those two things, I think that's where I would start.
Thank you so much for providing those opportunities and some ways that are accessible for everyone to join computer science. So I remember at the beginning of the interview, you mentioned that coding can have a big influence. And I want to know what inspires or what excites you about computer science.
There's two things that I think I really like. One is like after you finish a project, there's like a really big satisfaction, and it just feels really nice to see what you spent your time on building, and it's a really nice feeling. It applies not just to CS in any form of engineering, basically anytime you're building something. Yeah, there's that satisfaction, right? And the other thing I think is just there's so much potential. I think right now, there's all sorts of automations you can do here and there that could. I guess like it's kind of against what I was saying earlier regarding taking away jobs, but it does take away jobs, but I think it does save lives, like autonomous driving, stuff like that. That's what really excites me. There's also the aspect of I like the idea of automation because there are certain things that, in my opinion, should be automated so that people can do actual jobs that they really do want to do rather than stuff like this. I guess there's like this argument that it takes the job away from them, but so I read this book called Economics in One Lesson, and one of the things they said is like there's something that's usually missed with taking away jobs is that usually when you take away jobs, people like in terms of automation, it would be that like we would have more people, everyone would be on average be spending less money on this particular product thing that they're getting human labor to do rather than automation, and then that money is going. So everyone is having more money, then they're going to spend more, and everything else is going to get a bit more. Every other industry is going to get more funding, basically. And then in turn, those people are eventually going to find jobs. It's basically the argument. Like there's going to be a gap where it's kind of like dips in the employment rate, but I think it eventually is going to go back up and higher. And I think it's going to be for more valuable things. Anyways. So like, for example, for me, what I'm working on at Skinopathy is on billing. So to put it into context, usually right now, how doctors bill is that they write down everything they did for the day, basically. Like they recorded all their appointments, whatever, and then they send it off to biller, and then the biller figures it out and uploads it to their cloud and everything. It's just kind of ridiculous that you're paying someone just to upload documents, and it's not even your like receptionist. It's like usually just a separate person that just handles billing. Part of the reason, honestly, is because the Ontario health like web system is so bad in my opinion. Like I'm working with this. I'm a developer, and it's so there's errors in the documentation. They use outdated technologies from like 20, 30 years ago. They need to step up their game, and I think that would solve a lot of problems. Like also to put into perspective, these billers are making like 2% of what the doctors are making. For if the biller bills for like 10 doctors, that's like 10%, sorry, 20% of how much a doctor makes, right? And you can imagine that's basically a really good salary for like, because doctors can make up to like say half a mil, right, a year. So if just by billing for 10 doctors, you can make roughly like 6 figures. And I find that kind of ridiculous. Like, I just think that it's just like also doctors are losing a lot of money to stuff like this. And there's also the aspect of sometimes your bills get rejected and doctors have to handle that. If there's a better system there, it would be very beneficial to doctors as well. So they can focus more on actual patients, not just stupid paperwork. Yeah, that's one of the things that excites me about this project.
All right. Thank you so much.
And yeah, I just think that like I think uploading documents as a job sounds kind of ridiculous, and I think they have better places in society.
Yeah,
It's
of
a bit
course.
blunt, but
I think that's a good place to end our interview. So thank you so much for joining us today,
sounds
and
good. Yeah.
thank you for helping us unlock STEM.